afternoon, whatever time of day it is that you are listening, folks. Thank you very, very much for listening. Day today is the 19th of April, year of our Lord 2024. Welcome to yet another edition of the Coping Hour, hosted by Nicholas Inkle, a.k.a. Motown Noah. Got a lot of stuff to talk about today, so let's just jump right into it. Got a few housekeeping notes up top. We will reiterate this on Monday. Monday, however, will be the final episode that is, I don't want to say live, but is like I'm recording it in the morning and then releasing it the same day, because Tuesday we are scheduled to go in for our induction. That's the plan, at least. We still haven't had that confirmed. But the plan, it's on a schedule, but we haven't had anybody call us to be like, yes, this thing is happening. So Tuesday night, we'll be going in for the induction, and then hopefully at some point on Wednesday, we are delivering. And I say I'm just going to be there spouting affirmations and being scared. She's going to be the one doing it. But hopefully by Wednesday, we will have a son. I've recorded 2 evergreen episodes for paternity leave so far. I think there is just going to be a dead period where there's just nothing for a while, but hopefully I'm able to get like one more in the chamber, and then there will be some clear communication at some point about, when I'm actually going to come back. So keep your eyes peeled for that. In the episodes that are evergreen, I should say this too. If you've sent an email within the last like 5 to 6 days, the essence of the episodes is me just blind reading some of your guys' emails. So if I don't get to them either today or on Monday, just know that there's a good chance that I answered it or read your email in the evergreen episodes, and you guys will be able to check those out. So without further ado, let's jump into today's episode. A very startling report came across my desk. We were actually in the hospital getting ready for a little doctor's appointment, a little prenatal appointment on Monday. And my girlfriend, or it was on Tuesday, and my girlfriend, she goes, oh, I'm like, oh my God, what? And she shows me her phone, and Blake Griffin retired. Blake Griffin officially announced his retirement from the NBA. And, even if we knew it was coming, even if, he hadn't been on an NBA roster all season, it still kind of made you feel some type of way. Even if you weren't fortunate enough to be blessed with the presence of Blake Griffin on your favorite basketball team at any point, he still comes with like this nostalgia, and he's such a perfect figure for this very specific point in time in NBA history. And that's kind of what I want to talk about a little bit here up top, is I want to sort of eulogize him, because I've not been shy about mentioning how much he means to me and like my journey as a basketball fan and where he fits in all of that. So why don't we get into it? I mean, you start his career, and he missed his first season. I think he blew out his ACL. It was a knee injury, but he missed his entire rookie season. And it wasn't even that. It wasn't even the rookie season that was like my introduction to Blake Griffin. My introduction to Blake Griffin was actually when he was at Oklahoma. I guess technically it would have been his rookie year. The last ever NCAA basketball game, if you guys remember this, it was NCAA, was it 10 or was it 09? I think it was technically NCAA basketball 10. When he was at Oklahoma, the loading screens weren't loading screens. It was just you shooting around in a park as Blake Griffin. And it was like the most innovative way that we had seen up to that point on the PlayStation 3 and the Xbox 360, that like, instead of just sitting through a load screen and reading the same like, hey, tips and tricks, and go to easports.com// whatever to like check this thing out with like some bullshit graphic. It's like, no, you just get to hoop as Blake Griffin, and that was always a fun time. When you talk about Blake Griffin early in his career, you cannot not mention Lob City and what he meant to them. Between he, DeAndre Jordan, and Chris Paul, we talk about Steph Curry kind of ushering in this like social media age of NBA basketball. Steph Curry was probably the first, if not one of the first major social media players in the NBA, but Lob City and those Clipper teams were truly the first social media team, because it felt like on any given night, you're going to see somebody get their ass put in the basket by either DeAndre Jordan or Blake Griffin. And the super cuts that you can go back and watch of some of those lobs that were being thrown and some of those yams that were being thrown down are really hard to recreate. And I don't know if we're ever going to get something that explosive again. I say that, that's maybe a little bit hyperbolic. I mean, with the way that modern medicine is and the way that some of these guys train and the way that, these guys are only going to get more and more athletic. At some point, there will be something that reminds us of Lob City, but they were the first ones, at least in my lifetime, where on any given night you could wake up and, at the time it was, Twitter was technically in its infancy in terms of the way that the zeitgeist embraced it. Facebook had kind of hit the ground running at that point, and people were very much on Facebook. So like I would get up before school and I would be eating my cereal and I would go on like espn.go.com and then I'd check Facebook and see what's going on. And then you'd see the clip. Oh, what a monster jam by Blake Griffin. You would always see something, right? It culminates to in 2014, Blake Griffin putting up 24-10, the Clippers winning damn near 60 games, and he finishes third in MVP voting. We're going to fast forward the clock a little bit here. The band starts to break up. The Clippers have lost a handful of playoff series. They never had that much success, including blowing a 3-1 lead to the Houston Rockets in, I think, 2015. Does that sound right? We get to this point where Blake Griffin has the opportunity to go to Phoenix for $200 million. People forget that, we like to talk about $200 million contracts and how they're kind of commonplace now. But with the all NBA honors and the MVP voting and the All-Star shit, the bird rights, Blake Griffin was eligible for a bird rights, if he was going to Phoenix, wouldn't have made any sense because that's not how that works. He was eligible for a $200 million contract, and the Phoenix Suns were going to give him that. And he entertained that. But what the Clippers ended up doing was this fake jersey retirement ceremony in an empty Staples Center where they brought him out onto the court and they literally put his jersey in the rafters, being like, if you stick around here, this is going to be you. We will retire number 32. So Blake Griffin is like, hell motherfucking yes, I'm going to stay with the Clippers. It's Los Angeles. I love show business. I love comedy. I love doing commercials. This really is like the hub of entertainment in the world, and also sort of I don't want to call it the basketball mecca, but eyes are on Los Angeles regardless. This is the best situation for me, and you guys are going to pay me a shit ton of money. So Los Angeles, let's run it back. Let me sign this contract. Fast forward about 4 months, his ass is in Detroit. That's the business, right? It was a business move. The Clippers did him dirty. And I'll never forget it. I will never forget me as like an 18-year-old, 19-year-old Pistons fan running into my dad's room being like, did you see what just happened? We just got Blake Griffin. I hadn't been alive in the four major if I really wanted to do it, I talk about when the Tigers went after like Prince Fielder, when they went after, David Price. The Detroit sports market had been active in trying to acquire these stars, but as far as the Pistons were concerned, I hadn't seen anything like this. The AI trade did not count. So in his first game with the Pistons, I remember the sentiment being, oh my God, like, we have a guy who can draw fouls. Like, we have a guy who can actually absorb some contact and get to the line. That was something that we just hadn't seen, and it felt like it was the missing piece. It felt like you're trying to do this tango with Andre Drummond up to that point for 4 or 5 years, maybe even 6 years. And it was like, we finally have this complementary piece. Stan Van Gundy is trying to save his job, or rather Tom Gores has a gun to his head, and he's like, dance, motherfucker. Go make a big splash. Go do a big trade. Shocking that Tom Gores wanted to go get a guy from Los Angeles. I mean, that's where he spends all of his time anyways. I'm sure he actually spent more time watching Clipper and Laker games than he did Detroit, and at some point, light bulb moment for Tom Gores. He's like, hey, we should go get this guy. Is this guy available? We sent out Tobias Harris, and we sent out, I think, 2 first-round picks. One of them ended up being... Didn't one of them end up being Miles, and one of them ended up being Shai Gilgeous-Alexander? Or am I one of them ended up being Miles Bridges. I'm almost positive that that's the case. And so that sucked to not have any capital, But we had Blake Griffin. We didn't care. So you go into the offseason, Stan Van Gundy gets fired, the Pistons bring in Dwayne Casey, and we do what we always do. Any team is going to do this. I swear to God... you can't really do it if Trae Young gets traded this summer. Let me just say what I was going to say and not try to equate it to anything else. You love to do the thing when a team makes a mid-season trade for a player that feels like it's the missing piece. It's okay if they kind of flame out in that same season, But once next season rolls around, what do we say? Oh, they had the whole offseason together. They had the whole offseason to train together. It's totally different when you're able to get these guys in training camp together and really build that continuity and build that chemistry. And we go into the 2018-2019 season with Reggie Jackson, with Andre Drummond, with Blake Griffin, with Luke Kennard, with Bruce Brown, and we're really thinking to ourselves, this shit's about to happen. And for us at the time, that meant 41 wins. That meant we are going to the playoffs and we are going to feel comfortable about being a playoff team, and maybe we can win a series, and maybe we can make some noise. That's the ceiling on this thing, but that's all that we needed. It felt like Blake Griffin was the guy to get us there. We're about 4 or 5 games into the season. We're playing a game at home in Detroit against the Philadelphia 76ers. Blake Griffin goes for 50. I had never been alive to watch a Piston drop 50 with my own 2 eyes, live in real time as it was happening. But it felt like must-see TV. It felt like the Pistons had a star and they were taking this shit seriously. And for him to go out there early in that season and put up 50, it really, really, I cannot describe to you how real that it felt, that it was actually about to happen. As the season goes along, Blake Griffin has moments every single night that make you realize how lucky we are to have him. Even if, we can do the revisionist thing, and, it's not even really that revisionist, because in real time you were kind of like, damn, he does kind of hijack a lot of possessions. What did you want him to do, though, in a lot of those games? And he's battered, he's bruised. I think we had a stretch. Ish Smith went down in like mid-December, and he missed a couple of weeks, and that's kind of when the season started to tank. You think about a certain point in the season where Blake Griffin, I think it was after a Pelicans game, was just pissed. He was really pissed, and he was like, we keep blowing these leads and we keep losing in close games. It's because nobody's focused. And then Reggie Jackson doesn't realize what's happening. It's an on-court. Immediately after the game, Mickey York is talking to Blake Griffin, and Blake is not fucking having it, and he's talking about how not serious these motherfuckers are. And Reggie Jackson just does the thing where he kind of dips up in front of the camera, so it's just his face, and he's like doing like a silly little goofy face, and it was, the optics of it were so bad, and it felt like that's when the wheels were officially going to come off, and that it was over for Detroit. Blake Griffin makes an all-star team. Blake Griffin makes an all-NBA third team. And we get into the playoffs. Blake is battered at this point. His knees don't work. He's put it all on the line for us this year. I've kind of buried the lead on his three-point shooting, which was, to put it in a word, the only word I know how, and really the only word that I think captures how great he was from distance that year. It was transcendent. It was truly revolutionary. Relative to how he had played in recent years, specifically from the three-point line, because it did start to evolve in his final few years in Los Angeles, but the volume in Detroit and the efficiency was something that we just hadn't seen before. So we get into the playoffs. Blake Griffin misses the first 2 games. We're the 8th seed. We're playing the top-seeded Milwaukee Bucks. Shit. This isn't going to go well. It didn't. It was ugly. We lose the first 2 games without Blake Griffin. So you're down in an 0-2 hole going back to Detroit. And Blake, he just has to come back. If we want a chance, if we want a gentleman's sweep, losing 5, he just has to come back. He checks into these games with a knee brace the size of Little Caesars Arena itself. Go back and look at those photos and look at how big that fucking knee brace was. But it was a testament to his resilience and how desperately he wanted to win, not for himself, not just for his team, but for the city of Detroit. And he goes out there and he gives it all. It gives it his all. And at the end of the day, man, it wasn't enough. It was too much to overcome. In that game 4, there were some moments. Reggie Jackson had a putback dunk right before the half. And Kevin Harlan had a parachuting in. Reggie Jackson parachuting in. It was electric, and it really felt like it was going to happen. I keep saying that, right? It felt like it was going to happen because we had never seen somebody commit to the team. I can't say never. We hadn't seen somebody commit to the Pistons the way that Blake Griffin did in a considerably long time. We're talking 10 plus years, 15 years almost. At that point in 2018, 2019. He was one of those players that it gave you a reason to watch the Pistons. He was one of those players, even if you weren't a Pistons fan, by the way, it was one of those players that it just made you proud. And it didn't end well. that season, and specifically those last 2-3 weeks of the season, including the series against Milwaukee, was kind of when it started to go off the rails for him. There's an argument to be made that he destroyed his body just to get Detroit into the playoffs, just to get swept by Milwaukee. And the following season, he misses a ton of games. And I don't think it was until the season after that we were finally able to just be like, we just can't, for both sides here, we can't do this anymore. We ended up buying him out. He goes to Brooklyn, and he's with KD, he's with Kyrie, he's with Harden. He's playing in that Milwaukee Bucks series where KD's foot was eventually on the line. Blake Griffin played legitimate minutes in that series. And we had been talking at that point for how many months that, are we sure Blake Griffin can dunk? Like, we didn't think Blake Griffin could dunk anymore. That's how deteriorated it seemed like his body had become. Imagine telling someone 10 years prior that there's going to be a point that Blake Griffin, the guy who jumped over Ikea, wouldn't be able to dunk. And then I remember he threw something down, and it was like a whole thing, and everybody found it to be really funny. But he was great in that series and in that playoff run for Brooklyn. Blake Griffin had some moments here and there, and it kind of reminded you that he still got it at least a little bit. Ends up going to Boston and is kind of, what was he even, like the 10th man? If that on a good night, he was like the 10th man. At that point, it was just kind of like, hey, you're Blake Griffin, good veteran presence to have around here. Nobody was really expecting that much out of him. But I will always remember Blake Griffin as the guy who made me re-fall in love with the sport, and the guy who made me re-fall in love with being a Pistons fan specifically. So for Blake Griffin to go out, there are a ton of Pistons fans out there who do still have resentment towards him, which is always going to be a bummer to me. I'm not going to call them dumb. I'm not going to call them idiots. But it will always make me really sad. And if there was anything I could ever say to Blake Griffin, it would just be like, fucking thanks, man. Like, you are my guy. You are, to me, my favorite Piston that I've ever watched in my entire life, because of the greatest individual season that I had ever seen in my life from somebody suiting up for Detroit. So Blake Griffin, happy retirement. Probably not a better pick for a player to do a post-career podcast, right? That seems like it's right up his alley. And I'm going to be honest with you, I'm going to listen to every single episode just on the merit of how much I respect him and how much I love him, not only as a basketball player, but as a dude. So Blake Griffin, happy retirement. That was your eulogy. Let's talk a little bit about this play-in. On Monday's episode, I think I gave some wishy-washy communication on how I actually feel about the play-in, so I just want to clarify something really quick. I fucking love it. I absolutely love it. I do understand, maybe some of the, I don't want to say faults or like the some of the like detriments of the play-in, but I understand how some of it can irk some people. But then you watch the games and you feel the moment. You feel how consequential they are and the stakes that are at play. It's essentially a single elimination game, right? And I think to start with this Lakers-Pelicans game, I don't have that much to say on the Lakers front. I mean, it was LeBron, right? It was LeBron, and Anthony Davis was good. And I did have another one of those moments with D'Angelo Russell where it was early, and he finished with like 21-6. And it was early in the game, and he had like 13 points, and they're gassing him on the broadcast. D'Angelo Russell's scorching hot to start this game out the gate, 13 points. It happened again, folks. I'm sitting there. I haven't taken my eyes off of this game. I haven't seen him score once. Well, I've remembered vividly him missing a shot. So I think there appears to be a phenomenon where D'Angelo Russell scores all of his points during the little commercial break gimmicks that they do. Maybe he scores them all at halftime or something. I don't know. I don't think he's actually scoring them in the middle of the game because I never fucking see it happen. So shout out to D'Angelo Russell for being a phantom scorer. Shout out to the Lakers for winning that game. But the real story here is Zion Williamson is finally playing in. I know it's kind of a gray area to call the play in a playoff setting, but for all intents and purposes, we're just going to call it that for this episode, right? So Zion Williamson finally playing in playoff atmosphere, finally playing some playoff basketball. And what felt like we were almost witnessing like a legacy moment for Zion Williamson, like the first true, holy shit, he's arrived, high stakes, high point outage from Zion Williamson, plays 36 minutes and puts up 40 points, and then seemingly gets hurt. He goes up on this layup and goes down wincing, and Reggie Miller calls it out immediately. And I'm watching the replay. I'm like, no, I think he's just excited. I think he's just like, yeah, I think he's just excited. And then you see some different angles. You're like, oh, no, he is hurt. And then they go to commercial, and then they come back, and he's going to the locker room. And you're just, what? You're like, huh? What the fuck just happened? Zion Williamson playing one of the better games he's played in the NBA since he got in the best season. We can say that hands down, unequivocally. This is the best season of Zion Williamson's career, especially when you just factor in, he played, 70 games this year. So when it really starts to happen for him and when he really starts to put it together in a moment that New Orleans needs it from him the most, damn, does it fucking suck to see him go down like that. I'm a little confused on the reports that are coming out. Sounds like it's a hamstring. He will not be playing as of this recording. He will not be playing against the Kings tonight. The most recent report I read is that he'll be reevaluated in 2 weeks, which is suboptimal if you're a Pelicans fan. Doesn't necessarily mean he couldn't come back. We'll see what happens. But on like a weird non-contact really injury, he just kind of goes up and his hamstring just gets like pulled or strained. He wouldn't be out if it was a pulled hamstring. He would get back in at some point. It wouldn't take 2 weeks, but that sucked, man. That really, really sucked to see that. So the Lakers moved on. Pelicans are going to be playing the Kings. I'm not going to be doing like previews for the final play-in games just because there's not, the shelf life of it isn't going to be great. A lot of you, by the time you're listening to this, those games have already happened. So if we move on, to that night, the second game of that back-to-back, that doubleheader, man, Warriors Kings. And for transparency here, we didn't sit through the second half of this game. I've been very clear that our bedtime is like a hard cutoff at 10 o'clock, and we just, at that point, we just can't do it. So we were able to sit through the first half of this game, and it didn't look like it was going well for Golden State. But when I went to bed, I'm thinking to myself, well, they'll be fine. They'll be fine. I wake up to see that Klay Thompson finished the game 0 for 10, and when the game's over, they're walking back to the tunnel. Draymond is blowing kisses to dudes and motherfuckers in the crowd. And then you see Klay, and he's kind of just doing this really slow 360, just kind of looking around at the crowd and really taking it all in. That felt weird. That felt sad. Because if it would have been one thing if it was in, is it Chase Center that they play at? If it was in Golden State and he was doing one last thing, you would have easily have been able to connect the dots that like, oh, yeah, so he's gone. So he's just not going to play for the Warriors anymore. But the fact that it was it was Sacramento's arena, sure, maybe he was looking at the Warriors fans in attendance. Did it feel a little bit like, oh my God, is he about to retire? Like completely, would he rather die than not play for the Warriors? Is that what this is? So without getting a little bit too speculative there, because I think the truth and reality is that there are going to be a lot of teams this summer that need some shooting, some veteran shooting. You think about, well, the Lakers is the one that we've hypothesized a lot on this show, just because you have the whole dad thing, and it would be cool for him to go play for the Lakers, and it's sort of the twilight years of his career where it's like, whatever, this doesn't matter anymore. Although I guess they would still have LeBron and Anthony Davis, so it would matter, but you know what I mean. You look at a team like Orlando, and Orlando is going to add somebody. They got to add a scorer this offseason. I think sneaky, so I'm just thinking, maybe they go get Klay Thompson. I'm not sure. I think sneaky, we got to talk about Orlando as a trade partner for Donovan Mitchell. Not in this episode. We're not going to jump into that too much, but I just want to put a pin in that. I don't know if any of you have been thinking the same thing, but when you think about all these destinations for Donovan Mitchell, it just makes sense. I mean, Orlando is a team that I think if they can't turn it on offensively, which they can't always, unless like Paulo Banchero isn't he the youngest guy, not just in Magic history, but in NBA history, to lead a team in points, rebounds, and assists? Is that true, or was I wrong and it is just with the Magic? But either way, it's just Paulo in a lot of these games offensively. But defensively, if you're Orlando, you're like, well, we can turn it on and we can be like a top 5 defense in the NBA. So that's why you give them a shot at the playoffs, at least for one series, right? But this summer, I just think they're going to want to target somebody, and I don't think it's impossible to think that guy would be Donovan Mitchell. So back to this Warriors Kings game. Yeah, it just sucks. It sucks that it's over. You eulogized Blake Griffin for 15 minutes at the beginning of this episode, and you almost want to do the same thing for Golden State. We're not there yet. We're a while away from having to do that. But for all intents and purposes, it's not really. It is entirely within the realm of possibility that was it. That was it. And, we're staring down the barrel of Steph and maybe just Steph by himself, to be honest with you, depending on what happens with Clay and if they want to do something with Draymond where they're like, let's just break the band up and, just try to field something even semi-competitive around Steph and then just move on. But then, you have Steve Kerr coming out, and he's made some pretty compelling points about, well, Warriors fans, I understand that sometimes you're a little frustrated with Draymond Green, but how about the last 12 years of him winning Defensive Player of the Year, making All-Star teams, and winning 4 championships for you guys? Is it not all worth it because of that? If you're a Warriors fan, there's a case to be made that that's true, and that's a very reasonable and very fair. But for a franchise that kind of dominated a decade, I'm very unapologetic about my love for dynasties, and I always hate to say my love for greatness because that sounds corny, because it's not necessarily about that. I just love dominance. I love a dynasty, and it's because it just feels so generational. It feels like I feel privileged to be living through a time where a league can be as competitive as it is, whether it be Alabama in college football, whether it be the Patriots in the NFL, whether it be Golden State in the NBA. Would you throw, like, in the NHL, like the early 2010s Blackhawks? Do they count? If they don't count, the San Francisco Giants in baseball definitely count in the early 2010s, right? That was definitely a dynasty. I just don't remember how many the Blackhawks ended up winning. So to live through that dominance and to be able to, 20 years detached from it go, I remember that. And I to be able to hold up a historical lens to that thing and compare it to modern day or whatever it is, I love that. And for that to be over does suck a little bit for me, because I have so many fond memories of just being like, holy shit, look at these guys go. I'm going to be honest. I've never been bothered by the Kevin Durant thing. I've never been bothered by it. Fuck it. Who cares? Like, this is a game. This is fun. I don't care. I want all of the best players to be on the best team. That's hilarious. I don't give a fuck about, like, the competitive spirit of the game. I want teams to go 82-0. The thing that we always like to complain about on this show is the fact that Steve Kerr never went full, like, knife to throat and said, Hampton's 5, go win by fucking 100 points. Go win by 1,000. All those dudes would just get checked out, right? I loved it. Loved it. I didn't care. I don't even think it's a little bit lame that they went 73-9, beat Kevin Durant, and then Kevin Durant joined them. I don't care. I would have done the same shit. Who cares? So if it's truly over, if it's truly, truly over for Golden State, which remains to be seen, I had a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun watching them, and it sucks to see them go out the way that they did. But damn it, if they didn't put on a show, one of the best shows that we've ever seen for a decade, then I don't know what else to tell you. Moving on to the following night, we had the Miami Heat versus the Philadelphia 76ers. Folks, I got to tell you, I was fucking scared. Ooh, I was scared. Oh, man, I'm on the phone with my mom watching this game. It's unrelated. I was just on the phone. And I'm in the middle of saying something, and the Jimmy injury happens, and I stopped dead in my tracks. I stopped saying what I was saying. I was like, I'm sorry, a really bad injury just happened. And I'm like trying to keep an eye on it and being like, what the fuck just happened? Maybe I just saw a bad replay. It looked kind of non-contact-ish. There was a little bit of contact, but not enough to, like, warrant the physical reaction that he gave from it. So I was like, oh my God, is this, like, I don't want it to happen like that. I don't want the Heat to lose on the strength of Jimmy Butler being hurt for an extended period. That's not as fun to me. But then he just gets right back up. He just bounces right back up, doesn't even check out of the game, and he just plays the rest of the game. And you're like, oh, okay. Sure, he went 5 for 18, had 19, 4, and 5, and it's just like, it was like a fine Jimmy Butler game. He got to the line a handful of times, up-faked the shit out of a bunch of dudes, and, like, that was cool. But now we're hearing, another one is similar to the Zion one, but actually I'd say even on a greater scale. A lot of conflicting reports on this one in terms of how long Jimmy Butler is actually supposed to be out. Because if it's truly an MCL injury, then yeah, that's going to be a few weeks. So I don't really want to speculate here, because with the timetable of this, there could be a report that comes out immediately after this episode, and I just don't want it to age terribly. So we'll see what happens with Jimmy Butler. If he's out for a long time, Boston fans are going to rest easy. Right? They're going to rest pretty easy. I think the Knicks would have done the same, and maybe that's a conversation we'll have in just a second as it pertains to Philadelphia and New York. The other note I had from this game, just on Miami's end, was people were clowning Tyler Hero because he went, Jesus, I didn't know it got this bad, but he went 9 for 27 from the field. He went 4 for 14 from 3. He still had 25, though, right? And people making fun of Tyler Hero for putting up all these shots and bricking most of them because a lot of the misses were just bad misses. It's like you can watch a game and there's a very stark difference between good misses and bad misses. Do you know what I mean? You know what I mean? Like when it just like clanks off of the side of the rim versus doing one of those swirly, like in and out. You're just kind of like, he'll get it next time. Like it's mechanically there. But my thing is this, at the risk of sounding like I am defending Tyler Hero and the Miami Heat, which I guess I kind of am, actually, believe it or not. Well, yeah, that's what he does, though. That's what he does. That's like what you want Tyler Hero to do. And I don't give a fuck if he's 0 for 15. Like, keep shooting that shit. That's literally your whole deal. That's like what your job. The second that you stop shooting is the second that I know that we're fucked and we lost the game. So at some point, he's going to shoot his way out of it. At least you would think, right? And this isn't the constant from him. This isn't like the everyday thing where he's going 9 for 27. Surely if I went down his Basketball Reference game logs, I could find a good handful of stinkers in there. But I really didn't feel any type of way about it. I was like, yeah, man, like keep shooting that shit. It is what it is. We move on to the 76ers side of this. First of all, I think overall, did this game suck for like most of it? And then it just kind of got good. The lead changes in this one. I didn't even mention, wasn't there a which one was it where that's the Hawks Bulls game. We'll get to that in just a second. But yeah, this game kind of wasn't that great for a lot of it, but it like kind of was a little bit. And what you're seeing from Joel Embiid is I'm tired of people just like lying about Joel Embiid being like, oh, he's just really out of shape. It's like, well, he has been in the past, but that's not why he was gassed in this game. He was gassed in this game because he just got back from injury. And like they were saying on the broadcast, he just didn't play enough minutes to like ramp himself back up to be ready for this kind of basketball. It doesn't matter what kind of workouts you're doing. It doesn't matter. Like until you're physically doing it at game speed, it's just a completely different beast. So and then Doris Burke chimes in and she's like, well, he was tugging on his shorts during shoot-around, during pregame workouts. I was like, all right, Doris, relax. We don't got to flame the man. He's still playing really well because that's the craziest thing is you'll still have an off night from Joel Embiid, 6 for 17 from the field, but he's going to give you 23 and 15. Also threw in 5 assists. I believe he's averaging the most assists of his career, or at least he was pre-injury. I don't know with when he came back if that ended up going down. Another note I had from this game is about Champagne Campaign. Only logged 3.5 minutes in this game. But if there's anyone in the league who I had to make like a starting 5 of, this fucking guy, just this fucking guy, starting 5, Campaign is the point guard. Like still, that's what the team is called. This fucking guy, ? Still, ? Campaign is the point guard. I am shocked that he's like still around because it feels like his whole deal is he comes in and like he'll just knock down a pair of 3. He'll play 6 minutes, but he'll knock down a pair of 3s when your team needs it the most. And you're like, fuck yeah, Campaign. And that's like kind of his whole deal. How about me truly bearing the lead on this one? Sixers, they still play at Wells Fargo. Is that still what it's called? All these arenas changing their names every other goddamn year. I don't know what all of them are called anymore. Like Miami plays at like the fucking Kaiser Permanente Center, some horse shit like that. Let's just, for all intents and purposes, assume that it is still Wells Fargo. Sixers fans, I apologize if it's not. Floor seats, Wells Fargo. I got my tool in. Fourth quarter, screaming, that's why the fuck Batum is in on the back of 6 threes and an insanely clutch block on Tyler Hero, which by the way, I haven't seen anybody talk about this. Are we sure that wasn't a fucking foul? They showed like 6 different angles, and I'm like, that's a foul. That's a foul. Like, okay, whatever. Nobody challenged it. Nobody even talked about it on the bro. I was like, I'm pretty sure that's a foul. I guess I must be the one. Sorry if that bumping the desk was really loud there. I guess I must be the one who was wrong in this situation. I must be, because literally nobody's talking about that being a foul. Also, I didn't care. So Nick Batum we aren't that far removed from him stealing a shit ton of money from the Charlotte Hornets just to use. I don't remember what his contract was, but it was a lot. Like, it was like a Harrison Barnes, Trevor Ariza agent type of bag where, like, every couple of years, those two motherfuckers just kept getting paid. They just, like, whoever their agent was, right? That's like what Nick Batum had. And I remember years ago, this is like, Nick Batum is still green in Portland. And I'm like sitting in a basement with some of my buddies and we're watching Portland. And we're like, this is Nick Batum guy. I think we kept calling him like Nick Batum at the time. Ooh, Nick Batman? No, that's not funny. Move on. We were talking about Nick Batum as like, could he be Tayshaun Prince to Damian's Chauncey Billups? Like, is that a thing? Like, is there room for that? No. But I don't know, because although I guess Tayshaun wasn't just like ripping 6 threes a game. That's just not really what he was doing. But he was blocking the shit out of shots, and that's what Nick Batum did in this game. He's had such a weird damn career, Nick Batum. Just when you think he's dead, you think he's a lifeless corpse out there, he's like, in a playoff game, he's like, ooh, in a single elimination, essentially sudden death, but not really sudden death, but kind of sudden death, game against Miami, Nick Batum is like 6 threes and a super clutch block. Also, one of those games where I forgot who it was on the Heat, but somebody missed 2 free throws and everybody in the arena got free chicken. So shout out to them. And then we move on to the final game in the play-in. This was another one, unfortunately, folks. The later games, I can't stay up for them. So we caught the first half of this one, didn't catch the second half of it. Sounds like we probably should have, because Kobe White, can we get it? Maybe I need to do a little siren graphic or something for like that bitch alert, because Kobe White goes 15 of 21 from the field, 3 for 7 from deep, 9 of 10 from the line, and puts up 42 and 9. Oh, and 6 assists from Kobe White. Oh, and then post game, not to get ahead of myself here, but post game, he was like, one of the reporters was like, hey, do you remember what you said about Jalen Brunson a few weeks ago? And Kobe White was like, yeah, I said he's a motherfucker. He's so funny. Kobe White is so funny. He's so likable. Also, that's the kind of softball setup that I want to hear from a reporter. That's the kind of slanted question that I want to hear from a reporter. No, this game was awesome. I mean, outside of Andre Drummond stepping on Alex Caruso and like breaking his fucking leg, shattering Alex Caruso's leg, ending his career basically, which wasn't very fun. Vucevic, what the fuck? Vucevic had 24 and 12. That's news to me. Every time you watch Vucevic in 2024, if you're not a Bulls fan and you don't watch the Bulls that much, like usually you only watch them when they're playing your favorite team or they're in the play-in against the Atlanta Hawks, is your takeaway like, oh, he can still move? Oh, I thought he was done. I didn't know he could still do this. Yeah, he can. Oh, okay, cool. Like, that's cool. Good for him. Ayo had a couple plays in this game where he was just lightning fast. I mean, that's just what he does. Love Ayo. Bulls went up by what, like 18 in this game? Early. It was like 40 to... Is at the end of the first quarter. It was huge. And then Atlanta rips off a 14-0 run. What the fuck is happening in the NBA this season with, like... how much does your team need to be up by in order to feel comfortable? Who was it that just blew a 30-point lead a couple weeks ago? Was that the Celtics? Or did they come back from down 30? Somebody had a 30-point lead and they blew it. And, like, if it's the first quarter and my favorite team is down, well, not my favorite team because they're not fucking coming back, but your favorite team is down by 17, yeah, you're pissed a little bit and you're clenching your fists and you're contemplating turning off the game, but it's just, like, not out of the question that they could easily come back. How many times have we seen that this year where these leads just aren't safe at all? Just when you think, I'm thinking about turning this damn game off for a second. Because I'm like, oh, okay, so Atlanta just sucks. So Atlanta just isn't good. You sure? Okay, yeah. Oh, Trae Young is hurt. Oh, my God. Oh, no, Trae Young is hurt. Did you guys see that? Oh, my God, that horseshit foul baiting that he was doing in the third quarter. Any player who, like, gets bumped 30 feet from the basket and does, like, and, like, tries to put it up there, I don't care if you're like, well, it's just a smart basketball play. Fuck off. It's annoying because we lived through so many years of that actually getting called. And the honest to God, I think the worst thing, I don't want to say James Harden did this. I don't think this is James Harden's fault. He was just a huge suspect of this crime, like Houston James Harden, when you would pump fake and you would get the defender to leave their feet and you would fucking jump into them and pretend to put a shot up, it would get called every single time. That's not a basketball play. The guy who was emailing us like a week ago talking about how Allen Iverson is pornography and like it's actually horrible for basketball what he did to the game, that shit was horrible. That shit was like, oh my God, it would make me want to turn the fucking game off. It was disgusting. Luckily, that shit doesn't get called anymore, and that's kind of what I'm talking about here as something that Trae Young was doing. And it was just annoying. Also, DeMar DeRozan, especially in that first half, first quarter even. You think about a guy whose game is kind of being phased out of like, we don't really play like that anymore, DeMar DeRozan. Just in terms of like how many mid-range shots he puts up. But damn, when it works for him. And when it works for those Bulls, you're like, all right, you can keep doing that. It's fine. It's whatever. I was thinking about this, though, when I was watching this game. And I was like, is he ever going to go to L.A.? Is that ever going to get to happen? Is he ever going to get to play for like his hometown team? Or you guys remember that? Remember how many years we were talking about like, oh, what if DeMar DeRozan gets to go to Los Angeles? And that's like where he always wanted to go. And at this point in his career, I don't know what his contract looks like. I damn sure don't think anybody's going to trade for him. And I for damn sure don't think the Bulls are going to trade away DeMar DeRozan because they haven't, what's the number? The Bulls haven't made a trade involving players in like 2.5 years at this point. Is it longer than that? It's been a while. So I just don't really feel like this is the time that they're going to start doing it. Alex Caruso, all defensive team. Which one? Which one are you guys putting him on? Are you going first or are you going second? Because we did a whole thing on the shoot-around the other day where we went down all rookie, all defense, all NBA, all that shit, and we each named some players that we want to put on there. I think we ended up putting Caruso on the second team. I think that's where we ended up putting him. I said I was tired. That's the play-in, folks. That was the play-in this week. I said I was tired of talking about the MVP, and I am. Because we're spending a lot of time talking about not Jokic just for it to be Jokic. That's just what's going to happen. Whether or not you think that's what should happen, that is just what's going to happen. But if I really wanted to think critically about this, how reasonable would it be for me to say, no, that's not reasonable at all. I was going to say for Jalen Brunson to get a third place vote. He will get some. Some people will give him a third place vote. But I think the aggregate will be fourth. I don't know. People are kind of, I maybe would lump myself in on this a little bit, to be fair. Just to not veer credit to other people and be like, well, this isn't me that's doing it. I think I've been guilty of it a handful of times. Are we not realizing that this is the best that Giannis has ever played? Ever. And because the Bucks have underachieved, you have Damian Lillard, you have Chris Middleton, and you're Giannis, and you didn't win 50 games. But this is the best that you've ever played, and we're talking about you like you're fucking a Make-A-Wish kid? Shame on all of us, I guess. So I say all of that just to say I'm curious to see who's gonna get the nod as far as the MVP votes go. But here's what I would say to that, though, is, yeah, it's cool that Giannis is playing the best that he's ever played, and I would never disparage that. He's my king. He's probably my favorite player in the NBA, honestly. But the Knicks got the 2 seed. So that matters a little bit, right? As it pertains to the MVP, that matters a little bit. And some of you out there are going to be like, well, if that matters a little bit, then what about Shea? Well, that's why Shea is going to finish second or third, right? And I think that there's dude, I don't know if you're going to call me crazy for this. Jokic is going to win. I'm done hearing bullshit about, oh, well, if you look at this guy's on-off and all this, but shut up. Oh, the advanced stats love this guy. Are the advanced stats in the room with you right now? Shut the fuck up. I think there has to be a conversation about Shai Gilgeous-Alexander got the 1 seed in the West. In the West, the Western Conference, the Oklahoma City Thunder, who 2 years ago had the 2nd pick in the fucking draft, are now the 1 seed in the Western Conference. That guy can't finish second in MVP voting? I don't know. I don't give a shit, and I've even said this in the past. Oh, Luka Doncic, the first player to ever average, whatever, like 33, 9, and 9, like whatever it is that he's got. No one's ever done that before. This is not real. That's just not real. I did become hip to this. Shout out to Kofi. I didn't know about this. I knew that on Twitter there was Scoregami, which is for NFL games, and they track like unique final scores. And if there's a final score in the NFL that has never happened before, like 58-39, right? At this point, we're kind of running out of Scoregamis. But if it's something like that, that's a Scoregami. Never had that before. Wow, cool. Apparently, there's a Wembigami, and they track his stats, points, rebounds, assists, steals, blocks, and probably something else. And if he's had a unique stat, it's a Wembigami. There was some conflicting reports from the panel on how many he actually had. Somebody said like 5, and then I think Kofi said like 14 or 15. I don't remember what the numbers were, but he had a few this year. Did he ever get close to getting another 5x5 game? I didn't check in on that. I know he had another one. He had like a 5x4. I know he did that like 2 or 3 weeks ago. But otherwise, did you guys see that thing about Wemby was at a Drake concert? Drake was doing a show in Austin. I think it was before the season. And he was like, someone from like OVO camp was like, hey, Victor, like, you want to come up on stage? Like, Drake's been bringing out NBA players. And Victor was like, well, my teammates are here. Like, can I also bring my teammates? And they were like, fuck no. Fuck Jeremy Sohan. Huh? Hell no. Disgusting. Absolutely not. Fuck Devin Vassell. Victor was like, that's not very nice of you guys. And then I'm good then. I'm good. And then he has this quote just the other day where he's like, yeah, honestly, it was grown as hell what he said. He was like, I don't need alcohol. Like, I don't need drugs. Like, I don't feel pressured by any of that stuff because I feel very confident facing and dealing with everything that is within us. And I was like, God damn, that's some wisdom. You're 19 years old. I'm 25, and I'm still like, I could smoke some weed and work through what I'm dealing with emotionally right now. Okay, just a very disciplined guy. Does that have? I'm not trying to sound dumb here. Does that have something to do with the fact that he's like European and not just American? And it's just a different. It's like I don't know. I'm not gonna say it's a cultural thing because that makes it sound like that. Oh well, in France we don't do drugs over here. Yes, those motherfuckers do. Let's move on to something. I want to read an email here that we got, copingoursubs@gmail.com, spelled out phonetically. The email will be available in the description of wherever you are listening to this show. We got an email from Soren. Soren, welcome back to the show. I don't remember what you've emailed in about before, but you've definitely sent some emails in, so welcome back to the show. Email subject line is growth? ? Hey, Nick. Short but dense question for you. Where's the line between, quote, fuck this, the vibes are horrible, unquote, and pushing past discomfort in the interest of growth? Hope all is well. Soren. Yeah, I mean, that's as short and sweet as they come. Thanks for the email, man. I don't really know how to answer this, to be honest. I've been chewing on this one for like 2 days now because I think it's just an awesome question. And as it pertains to me, because when I read this question, I think maybe you were, thinking about this through the lens of like sports, or it was just like a more general and a more broad sense. Let's tackle the sports angle really quick. At some point, when you identify that the vibes are super bad with whatever team it is that you're rooting for, your favorite team, I think it's easier than people make it out to be to just punt on the season, be like, this isn't good, and I'm not. It's a game, and that's lost on people a lot, is that this is supposed to be fun. This is supposed to be something that you do in your leisure time because you enjoy it. The average person, right? The average person watching these games is just some guy. You don't need to like psychoanalyze all of these like actions that are being run and like the shit that's happening behind the scenes. Like, I get that in your free time it is fun to do that sometimes, but dog, if it's pissing you off, if it's upsetting you, you're getting nothing out of it. Turn that shit off and turn something on that you actually enjoy. I don't think there's any reason for the average person to force themselves to watch a team that brings them zero joy. And that, if you're a Pistons fan, it's not like the owner gives a fuck about us, right? If I was a Clippers fan and the team stunk, I'd be like, well, at least Steve Ballmer is like paying for everybody's food. That's a very, very nice gesture. Motherfuckers be like, oh, that's just a drop in the bucket for him. Who cares? Shut up. Oh my God. Shut up. It's so annoying. Finding something to be wrong with fucking everything just because this guy's a billionaire is so annoying. It's a very nice thing to do. He didn't have to do it. It's very nice. Plenty of billionaires who don't do that, i.e. Tom Gores, and fucking all of them, by the way. All of them. None of them do that. So it was just cool that he did. Pushing past discomfort. When I think of this, man, honestly, I think of this through the lens of what is like my everyday life. Like my 9 to 5 is like fear-mongering myself with like what's going on with conflicts throughout the world. And I've been very unapologetic about, not unapologetic, that's not the word I want to use here, but I have not been shy about admitting that the conflict in Ukraine has gripped me in a way that I don't like. And, you know, you think about like the annexation of Crimea was, 10 years ago at this point? I remember being in high school when that happened. Like, I remember that and being like, what's Ukraine? I was like, what's going on over there? What is this? And then as the years go on, you know, eventually, you know, keeping up with it, it eventually boils over in 2022 and this invasion happens. And it's very bizarre to be living in a time where all of this footage and all of this data is available to you like that. You don't have to dig very far in the internet to see some Russian conscript who doesn't want to be there, who like doesn't have ammunition. I'm not trying to empathize with these guys, but in some way you kind of have to, right? Because it's fucking horrible. It's a meat grinder. These what's happening to these kids. You don't have to look very far to see them getting fucking blown up by a drone. It's the same thing with the Ukrainians, by the way. You don't have to look very far to just see a war crime happen to like some Ukrainian civilians. And this is without even touching, obviously, what's going on in the Middle East. And that's a completely different that's a whole other beast in and of itself. But the same principle would apply, though. You don't have to look very far, especially because a lot of that shit is plastered on front pages, newspapers, and it can be really hard to turn it off. And I always feel some type of way about, like, I was having a conversation recently. I was like, dude, I think I just need to stop going out of my way to be so involved in, like, what the communication on some of these conflicts are. Because, A, I can't do shit about it. B, it's just devastating me. But it's like, at the same time, this is something I've talked about before, is if I lived in an alternate universe and I didn't we weren't about to start a family and I was just some solo dude, I was single, I didn't have any, because the truth is if I didn't have her, I would be single. It's like, I would be boots on the ground in some part of the world holding a camera. That's what has compelled me my entire life. And I think that it is the most raw and important and honest form of journalism, and kind of the last bastion that we have left as far as journalism goes, especially in the West, right? So I think there's that part of my brain that it forces me to stay sort of in the loop. I don't want to say involved because it's not like I'm there. I'm not wearing a vest. I'm not wearing a helmet. I don't know. But I feel a responsibility to understand that shit could be pretty bad. Shit could be pretty bad. And, you know, as bad as some people think that we have it in America, we don't. And it can be really hard to turn that off for me sometimes. And, you know, I'll log on to Reddit and, you know, you want to talk about it's not hard to dig deep. I've never joined the combat footage subreddit because I don't want it to be on my front page. That doesn't stop me from, like, checking it out every other day. Like, I think some of this also, maybe I'm going, like, way too deep on this, and I'm sorry, I don't even know if any of this is answering your question, Soren, but you know what's a weird thing about being, like, around my age? Is the unrestricted internet access at a time when the internet started to boom. I remember being like 11 years old and watching one of the ISIS beheading videos. And I was like, oh, fuck. this is real. I don't know why I thought it was going to be like a goof, and then it was not. And without giving any details, as like an 11-year-old, I didn't need to see that. I did not need to. I would have been maybe a little bit older than 11. I don't think ISIS was around in 2009. Was they around in 2009? The more that the years go on, the less that I remember about shit like that. But it's crazy, man. But that also extends beyond like combat. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that sort of at the dawn of the real internet that we know today, which was probably about 15 years ago, that it was we talk about the NIL being the Wild West. The motherfucking internet was the Wild West back then. And even before then, it was even crazier, because around 15 years ago is really when it started to get regulated, but it was still, I mean, anything went, right? And you would see motherfuckers getting their heads blown off on like Facebook. I saw one the other day that I just can't get out of my head, and it really bothers me. So when you talk about growth, I think maybe that's some of it for me is, and I'm using, all of this like conflicts in the world as my vehicle for like spiritual growth, I guess, is because understanding, not to quote the movie Fury, but what a man can do to another man, and, what's happening in certain parts of the world. Usually it's not even, we were just talking about this the other day, my girlfriend and I, because we went and saw Civil War. And, through the eyes of a journalist, the politics of these conflicts don't matter. It's the conflict themselves and the importance of documenting them and understanding what's going on and understanding the stories of the victims of this conflict. Because ultimately that's what's more important than anything, is the victims of these conflicts in Sudan, in Ukraine, in Gaza, right? So I picked a really tough medium to be obsessed with because it fucks you up. And imagine what it does to the people who are actually there, who are actually boots on the ground. And that's why I kind of push myself a little bit more. And I'm also somebody who, I'm not afraid of pushing my own boundaries a little bit, whether it's like morally or not, you know what I mean, like within reason, or like politically and stuff like that. Like, I think it's important to challenge yourself on a lot of those things so that you understand what you actually believe and you get a better concept of what you actually believe, because you'll hear something and you'll just like vehemently disagree with it, and you'll say, well, then I guess I know where I stand on this thing. Or you'll hear a perspective on something that you otherwise would have disagreed with, but you hadn't thought of it that way before, and you think, oh, okay, I guess I am a little bit more wishy-washy on this thing, or whatever it is, right? I think it's important because in 2024, motherfuckers are just in echo chambers. And I think that there is, why don't I not do the whole partisan thing and make fun of people in that sense? But there are plenty of cases where, that's why it's so damn hard to even watch the news anymore. It's really hard. Because, oh my God, and if one more little startup company comes out and is like, we're the first unbiased news medium out there on the net. Download our app today. And then you open it up and they're like, should trans people, should they be alive? And then you're like, so this isn't unbiased though. So that's not unbiased though. That's just what all of them are. And then you open another one, they're like, I have my conservative voice. That's what I do for that. I don't have like my lib voice though. I don't know what that is. I think that's just how I talk. I think that's just my normal voice would be my lib voice. I can't think of what the adjacent would be there. It's like, what would one of those liberal conservative, or one of those liberal, whatever, it doesn't matter. See, I said I didn't want to do the partisan thing because I really don't want to. Is that this whole Robert Kennedy thing, this whole RFK thing, he's like, we need to dismantle partisanship, which is interesting to me because I don't think he's telling the truth. I think he's lying about that. I just think he's lying about it. I really don't want to talk about this right now. I really don't. Because I'm going to be all disjointed and I'm going to say something that I don't mean. Okay, folks. That's going to do it for today's episode. Uninterrupted hour, once again. Going to be honest with you guys, it's kind of easy for me now. I can, as long as I know what I want to say and I have the order, the pecking order that I want to do it, And very selfishly, it feels very good to do a full hour uninterrupted, and there were really no bumps in the road. And I appreciate all of you that have listened to this, and I hope that when I do eventually go on paternity leave, I know it's going to suck once the the backlogged episodes dry up. Again, as of right now, there's only 2 that have been recorded, and I don't even think they're that good. But it's important to me that you guys get something out there because consistency is everything. And I care about the listeners a lot, and I always try to mix it up with you guys in the comments on YouTube at least. So I can't do it on Spotify. It's impossible to do it on Spotify. Hey, I asked you guys to get us to 200 5-star ratings on Spotify, because at the time we were at like 190. I completely forgot to check for a few days, and we're up to 240. So thank you all very, very much for that. Actually had a little like heartwarming, like, oh, like I felt it. It was very palpable. So thank you all very much for that. If you're listening to this on Spotify, be sure to rate 5 stars. If you're listening to this on YouTube, be sure to leave a like, subscribe, nice little comment for the algorithm, and I will catch you guys
computers now have
in the
primary
next
control.
Beautiful, beautiful,
Primary control.
beautiful,
Primary control.
beautiful,
Primary control.
beautiful.